development of a series of other crops that would fit that same model. Let me see what we got here. So the goals of this initiative: develop new perennials and winter annuals. Why perennials and winter annuals? Corn and soybeans are on the landscape. They have a brown period attached to them. We want to fill that brown period and put perennials in the landscape where corn and soybeans and other crops are not profitable, right? To produce those ecosystem services. To produce new ingredients, you have to have an end use. Farmers can't just grow things that there's no market for. So this program not only does the genomics, we do everything all the way through to market development. So design these profitable cropping systems that produce ecosystem services that have a market behind them, and developing the supply chain. So just to remind everyone, that you drive by the St. Paul campus over the last 100 years, has provided leadership for the introduction of hybrid corn, sweet corn, wheat, oats, soybean, barley. Every crop out there except sugar beet came from those fields as you drive by, right in the middle of the damn city, right? All the crops that are out there. And then, as we were talking earlier, these crops have been picked up by the industry and then developed to support what you see on the Minnesota landscape and the landscape of the Midwest. And you know what it is. It's corn and soybeans, right? That basically dominates that landscape. So our work is just a continuation of what has been happening in the past. What was the last crop introduced off of that land? Big crop, soybean, in the 1950s. So there's been this huge gap in new agronomic crop introductions off of this landscape because of the dominance of the corn and soybean in the marketplace. So I'll just give you a visual. This is kind of what the Midwest looked like in the 40s. Look at that. Look at that mix of hay, perennials, some corn in the green. Look at soybeans in the 40s. See that gray spot up there? Right? Soybean is a new crop, the last new introduction. And that happened in the 1940s. I mean, I'll tell you why in a couple of seconds. Why it took over a large portion of the landscape. Now, this is a picture of the same farm in 1976. Bang, that's how fast it happened. The transition to two crops happened very, very fast. We went back to this site a few years ago. It's all now corn and soybeans. And what else is left? Some of those homes are gone, right? So people are also leaving that landscape. Basically, then you have a two-crop system, and you all know they're all summer annuals. Brown in the fall, brown in the spring. No carbon being captured during that period of time. So crop diversity, just look at the corn region of the United States, right? That really light area. Basically one or two crops in production in that region. And they're all very similar, very few ecosystem services being produced. So this is where we've come from. Prior to the introduction of agriculture in the Midwest, it was a natural ecosystem, right? Woodlands, prairie, ecosystem services dominated that system here on your left. The output for human consumption was really low, right? We then moved over the last 200 years to a system that looks like what we have in the middle. High levels of productivity, basically feed for livestock production coming out of the Midwest. Very little human food directly. It's basically just feed for livestock, right? That's what's dominated our landscape. So when you look at the soybeans, think meat, right? That's where that grain goes, to produce meat for human consumption in the United States and really around the world. Our model of thinking is, can we design systems that produce those ecosystem services and are also highly productive? To me, it's what I call the wicked challenge. Are we going to be able to do that? And I think it's a must, because we need to stabilize the health of that soil, the health of that landscape, if we're going to be able to maintain highly productive agricultural systems to provide the calories for the emerging human population around the world, not just here in the United States. So this is what I wanted to put in front of you, those of you that are really focused on carbon in the agricultural systems. Go way back on the left side of this slide, 1880. If you look across the Midwest, the percent organic matter in the soil was in the range of 4 to 5. As the prairie was disturbed, look what has happened to the carbon in the soil. We basically have put up plumes of CO2 into the atmosphere. The general idea is that across the Midwest, we've lost 50% of the organic matter in the soil, right? Now, as you guys are thinking about agriculture and whether agriculture is going to be able to sequester carbon, basically what this shows is that a corn oat hay rotation, a corn oat rotation that's been in place for many years, and continuous corn, the answer is no. There has to be some major changes in the system if in fact we're really going to be truthful about whether or not we can sequester carbon in the agricultural systems of the future, right? So the Forever Green initiative is designing and developing new crops that we hope will be able to sequester carbon, but also make the landscape less leaky to nitrate nitrogen, increase in soil health. So we look at it as a package. It's easier to get the water quality benefits. I am still not sure that we can develop agricultural systems that are going to be highly efficient in sequestering carbon. I think that is a wide open question. And in our program, we're looking at it every dang day, right? To make sure that when we talk about these systems, that we're not lying to you. We don't want to bank carbon that isn't real, right? That to me is, for us, is the grand challenge. And we're investing a tremendous amount of funds into figuring out whether or not these systems are truly sequestering carbon or not, or are reducing greenhouse gas production, beyond just CO2, right? Let me lay out what I just described to you earlier in that initial slide. We basically have gone through and are producing a landscape that is based on corn and soybeans on large portions of the Midwest, right? What does that give us? What does that look like from a satellite shot starting in early spring? Uh-oh, looks brown, right? That's a picture of chlorophyll in the landscape in April. Look at Minnesota, look at Iowa, in that area where you have intense production of corn and soybeans. Not surprising, there's nothing there, right? But look at those areas where perennials, look at southwestern Wisconsin. You guys know that area, right? Pasture lands, woodlands, the unglaciated area, right? Look how that stands out in contrast to those areas that have been highly disturbed. Now we're in May. We're still brown, no cover, right? Corn may be planted, but how tall is it? Yeah. Very little root development. June, we now start to fill in the corn and soybean system. We start to capture carbon, CO2, pretty extensively, starting about June 20th. Right, that's when you drive around the state and you see the fields are starting to look green. Right. July, boy, are we fixing carbon. Right, it's green. And corn is a C4. I mean, it's really good at sequestering carbon. September 15th to October, there's that brown area again, right? And this is what I make every group focus on with me. How long do we have living plants in the landscape that are fixing carbon in the Midwest? July 15th, August 15th, September 15th. 3 months out of 12. And then I always say, what in the hell could go wrong? Right? The system's leaky, there's nothing protecting the soil, on and on. You guys get the idea. But to me, this is the most important slide I can show you. Right? So for 3 months, you're sequestering carbon. The rest of the time, no. And this is true throughout the entire annual crop production region of the United States and really around the world, right? There's nothing unique about us, right? And then I'm going to focus on these pieces, then we'll come back to carbon a little bit later. When that land is brown, that's when you have maximum tile line flow, right? Most of you know that large portions of the Midwest has tile lines 4 feet below the soil surface. Water moves down and out into surface water. Nitrate, nitrogen, you guys know about it. It leaches. Water goes down, nitrate, nitrogen goes with it. And if you don't have roots there holding it, where does it go? To the Gulf of Mexico or into the rural water supply, right? So the Forever Green Initiative is designed to fill that brown. First with the winter annuals to fill the brown in the fall and the spring in the corn and soybean rotation, and then to position some of the perennials in other regions of these cropping systems that give you better ecosystem value as well as new additional economic value. New food ingredients, and you know the one we're focused on, you know where the big demand is coming. Plant-based proteins in the world, right? Whether it's for direct human consumption or for animal feed. That is the big demand, right? That's the big change that's occurring. Creates new economic opportunity. You guys have watched the turmoil in rural America for years. I'm one of those kids. I grew up, I'm a farm kid. I'm a dairy kid from Northwestern Ohio that got pushed off of the landscape as that system changed. No economic opportunity for young people because there's no value added. Remember that diverse farm? What was that farm all about? It had value added through livestock. Those two pieces now got separated. Grain farms, dairy, large animal feeding systems, in many cases outstate, they got connected. Where did those kids from rural communities end up at? Twin Cities, Des Moines, right? Because there's no economic opportunity. And this is what I would say, just a personal thing. The thing that I'm proudest about in terms of my work in Rosa that I described earlier, a lot of those kids from that community over the years came to the University of Minnesota and got their undergraduate degrees. A lot of those kids, where are they at? They're still in Rosa and Lake of the Wood County doing really well because of that grass seed industry that was developed off of that new perennial system that they were able to not only grow the crop, process the crop, mix it, and market it to the world, right? That really is the thing I'm most proud of in my time in Minnesota. Plus, these systems are designed to produce those ecosystem services all the way, from soil health, water management, nutrient management, and we hope potentially to reduce greenhouse gases and potentially sequester carbon. So these new crops provide new unique food ingredients. They have to have it in use. They have to fit into the economy, or we're all just wasting our time, right? Oils, fibers, protein, phytonutrients. So these forever green crops provide new economic opportunities, high value ingredients. Our perennial pea in partnership with Purus, putting a new form of protein into the marketplace for direct human consumption. People are interested in green marketing. Consumers want to be tied to these new landscape outcomes. Innovative food products, and enhancing diversity of farmers. In the piece of the other slides that I usually use, it says for rural communities as well, right? And those ecosystem services. Soil health, clean water, pollinated habitat, potential carbon sequestration, and soil protection, right? That whole idea. Economic opportunities, economic pull to give us these services. So the focus is on winter annuals and perennial crops, and I hope you get an idea as to why that's the case. Filling that brown period in the current corn and soybean system, as well as positioning perennial crops in regions, in areas that give us enhanced ecosystem services. Sounds easy, doesn't it? Just do it, right? I used to have hair. So it's been my job over the last 25 years to build those 16 teams. There are really 16 companies within the University of Minnesota that are organized from basic genomics, breeding, agronomics, evaluation of ecosystem services, food science, market development, and supply chain development. We have 55 people at the University of Minnesota, from faculty, graduate students, postdocs, and undergrads that are all part of this work, right? In a very organized way around each of these crop platforms. So breeding and genetics, if you don't have the crops, you don't have anything, right? It's just like, we wouldn't have corn production out there if it hadn't been for the development, excuse me, of hybrid corn, right? You wouldn't have soybeans out there if the investment hadn't been made in the development of the soybean varieties, right? Even after you have them, then you have to do the agronomics, you have to develop the end uses, you have to do the commercialization, and then the supply chain development. And all of these are underway, all funded, teams working together across all these 16 platforms at the University of Minnesota. So when you drive by that campus, and that's why I go to the dang fair, is to make sure that people are aware that when they drive by those fields, and if you drive by them today, you're going to see some green out there. That's us, right? So most of you are very aware, and some of you online are probably working on cover crops, right? This is not a new idea. I've been at the University of Minnesota for 48 years. This is the third cycle of cropping, of cover crop interest in my career, right? And I'll show you a little bit later, what percent of the Midwestern landscape has cover crops on them? It's 2%. What's wrong, right? Something's wrong, right? And we'll talk about that. So with no cover, this is the nitrate leaching you get. You put a radish out there that winter kills. This is the level of nitrogen that's moving through in terms of pounds. And then you have winter rye, which does not winter kill. And it is the most effective in reducing nitrate movement through the system. And it would have the greatest potential of sequestering carbon, right? Just from a cover crop perspective, right? Why? Because it's producing mild mass, it's got roots. That's why there's limited amount of nitrogen moving through that system. So no cover, 70 pounds of nitrogen lost. Do you guys know what the price of nitrogen is now? 50 cents a pound, right? So it isn't just a contaminant, right? 73 pounds, that's real money, right? To a farmer. So it is a connection between, economic loss and environmental impact. The radishes, there's still 76 pounds going through because it winter kills and there's nothing there in the spring to hold the nitrate nitrogen. As compared to the winter rye, we covered in the fall, it's still covered in the spring, right? So this is why our focus is on winter annuals that established in the fall and are still alive in the spring. They are the ones that give you the best retention of nitrate nitrogen, and those are the ones that have the greatest possibility of sequestering carbon, right? But there's always issues, right? In Minnesota, corn comes off late. It's hard to get these cover crops established, right? You don't get a lot of biomass and you won't get a lot of carbon capture. All right, so everyone gets all excited about the numbers. Total cover crop acres increased rapidly from 2012 to 2017. Minnesota up 42%, it's higher than that now. Iowa up 150%. Illinois up 120 some percent. But when you look at the acres, in Minnesota, it's like maybe 3.6% of the acres have a cover. Iowa, 4.2. You get the idea, right? There's still a lot of brown out there. I just looked at a satellite shot from this fall that I could make available to you. Even though with all this work on cover crops, it's still brown. Millions and millions and millions of acres that are still brown, right? And what does that also mean? From your guys' perspective, you're not capturing carbon. It's not being captured. So this is the other thing in terms of the debate that's going on, right? And the possibilities for carbon sequestration. This comes out of our groups. Very recent literature search, looking across all the data sets to get an idea of what the potential is to sequester carbon, right? When you look at cover crops, no till, it's really low. The potential to sequester carbon based on all the literature suggests it's low. And I just showed you pictures as to why that's probably the case. Just not getting enough biomass. It's not growing for a long enough period of time, right? The literature says if you can then get a perennial into the rotation, maybe like kerns that we'll talk about later, or a forage crop like alfalfa, that increases the possibility to sequester carbon. Now look at the blue line, if you can see it. I just put this together last night. Apologize for the quality of the slide, but I hope we can use it, right? So the blue dashes basically represent sequestration plus emissions reduction. In other words, the loss of greenhouse gases from the system, right? So the idea, again, as you see, the more and more you move to a less disturbed and perennial system, greater is the possibility of sequestering carbon, right? But in a highly disturbed landscape system where you just incorporate cover crops, this isn't just me making it up. This is going through and reviewing the literature. The opportunity to sequester carbon appears to be pretty low within the context of the current system. That doesn't mean you can't change it, right? To increase the amount of carbon that's being sequestered using cover crops. But in my opinion, it's going to have to be different than what we're currently doing. So if you look at the top, the real red dash, that basically shows the millions of tons per year that are being lost in comparison to the systems that we're talking about. If you were to convert 10 million acres, this is the level of reduction that you would get per year in relationship to what is actually being lost from the system, right? And most of this data comes out of some of the long-term cropping systems trials that I showed you in the beginning, right? All right. So 25 years ago, as I watched the cover crop work that I was involved in, and I came to the conclusion we weren't going to get very far because of the reasons I just presented. I thought we would take the idea that we developed in Russia and expand it and start developing the new crops that would be options for farmers as the time developed, where they were going to get paid for carbon sequestration, being able to protect the soil health, that there would be tools that would be available to do that, right? And every once in a while in one's lifetime, you get lucky. So here we are. So here are those 16 platforms that we have under development. And as I told you, they're all funded, they're all active. And you can just look at this and see 55, 60 faces that are working on these projects to move these new systems along. But what I want to point out to you is, here are the perennial crops. They would, in fact, displace some corn and soybean acreage, all right? The winter annuals would not displace any corn and soybean acres or small grains. They would fit in, and what's their role? To fill the brown in the spring and fill that brown in the fall. With what? A new economic opportunity. So in my opinion, and it's just my opinion, based on my interaction with farmers, one of the reasons that farmers do not incorporate cover crops in the rotation is cost. And their feeling is that they don't get any financial return on that investment. Just remember this. In southwestern Minnesota, do you know what percent of the land is leased? It's rental land. You know what the percent is? It's about 70. Right? So basically, the lease farmer does not have a tendency to improve it for the next farmer that's going to run that land, right? They have to look at, and so does the banker. I don't know if we have any bankers online, right? So we talk about farmers making decisions. In many cases, the real decision maker is who? It's the banker. The banker is basically pushing for those systems where there is crop insurance, where there is the safety net, basically setting it up that when they make that investment with that farmer, they know they're going to get paid back, right? So that's the other part of the system. Everyone talks about the farmers, and I'm not telling you guys anything you don't know, but the financial system is also a major player in policy and what happens then on the landscape. And then we have another group that we're very excited about is the native woodies. We have hazelnuts that are now going commercial in the Midwest. The elderberry industry is exploding, and these are really new, exciting areas of development. Right? But I just want to tell you that that these are real, right? They're all funded. The Pennycrest has got $10 million in federal funding. So that basically says the work that these people we have invested in are now being perceived as being real, and major federal funding and industrial support, foundation support is coming in around these crops, right? I'm going to give you a couple of examples, if I might. Where does the time go? So I'm going to have to give you, I talk too much in that introduction, but so I'll just give you a couple of examples. I'll flip through some of the slides just to make my points to you. Right? So the one that some of you have probably heard a lot about, Kernza, has been under development for 25, 30 years, right? And it's now, the University of Minnesota just released the first Kernza variety in the world. It's called Minnesota Clearwater. We're naming all the varieties after water bodies in the state of Minnesota. So the first one is Minnesota Clearwater, and another one is going to be released, new variety next year. I don't know what the name of the variety will be. But this work is in partnership with the Land Institute. The breeder at the Land Institute is another product of this program. His name is Lee DeHaan. You have to keep reminding people as we talk about these crops, we are an academic institution. All right, we can produce technology, but our primary role is developing the next generation of scientists for agriculture. So Lee DeHaan is actually the lead breeder on Kernza at the Land Institute, and we work in partnership with him and a series of other groups across the country now that are actively engaged in the development of this intermediate wheatgrass Kernza. And just to remind you, it's the first perennial grain in the world, right? That's a big leap, right, to a new model of agriculture systems. That's why we're interested. Kernza is a long root in comparison to winter wheat, right? Growing in the same field in the same year, right? So the Kernza, and those of you that are thinking about carbon capture say, oh my, there might be something there. But I have to tell you, we don't know yet. It looks promising, but what is the turnover rate of those roots? Are they being broken down by microbes that release it up as CO2 very rapidly? We don't know. Once you have those roots there, this crop stays in for 4 years. Once you kill the tops and plant a new crop, what happens to that carbon that's in that soil, right? But we like the idea that it's down almost 3 meters deep in the soil, right? And you guys all know that deeper you go down the soil, fewer microbes, right, for re-release. But that's the study, that's the other work that's going on. It's hard, it's difficult, and it's long-term, right? And that's the other thing I'll just point out to you. That's the other big difficulty, and that's why we don't have a lot of this long-term research, because no one wants to fund a project that goes on for 25 years, right? Everyone wants an answer in a year. This is a type of science that you can't get real answers in a short-term project, right? And that's one of our big issues, right? So Kernza, we're breeding for large seed, a lot of biomass. So this is a dual use. You can graze it in the spring and fall, harvest the grain in August, and turn that grain into a wide range of products. And this gives you just a few that I pulled together. I don't even think I have the product from General Mills even on here. But that gives you an idea that it's going commercial. It's going commercial very rapidly. And I rest my case. You can make beer out of it. All right, so it can be used for feed. And at the time of harvest, for those of you that know agricultural animal systems, forage systems, at the time of harvest of the grain, the stems still have 15% protein, which is high, right? Then can be used for dry dairy cattle, for example. The timeline, I'm not going to go through this in detail, but the idea that the research was started by the Rodale Institute in the 1980s, but this crop had been introduced into the United States from the Caucasus regions of Russia 150 years ago as a forage crop. All we're doing is domesticating it as a dual-use crop, increasing seed production off of this base. So basically, it's direct domestication, no genetic engineering. But I'll give you an idea as to why we can make these rapid advances. All right, so obviously we're doing the basic genomics. I'm not going to go through this in detail, but we have folks that are working on the basic genomics of this plant. We have sequenced the genome, just like they sequenced the human genome. This is the big deal. And it's the other biggest thing I can tell you about today. We can sequence the genome of these new crops, which gives us a very great scientific base to move forward on. And we think this is going to be a way of rapid development of these new crops. It's not engineering, but you make a cross, you can determine whether the allele that you want is there, and then you don't have to reevaluate the others. So sequencing the genome, this is what's going to be able to advance all of these new crops very rapidly, or much faster than was possible in the past. This is just the breeding scheme that speeds it up. We're focused on increasing seed size, reducing shatter, and developing hull-less grain. We're moving very rapidly to increase seed size. We then have our food science group working directly with our breeders to move through Pam Ismail and George Annar to move these food products in partnership with the food industry in Minnesota and beyond. So this is what, if you drive by campus and you see these things, this is what's going on there. And I told you about the release of Minnesota Clearwater. This is the first variety. New one is coming. The agronomics are being done to look at yield and nitrogen rates and all the work that has to be done there. The other thing I wanted to show you, and then I'll stop. We'll be able to get to the rest of these things today. Apologize, but this is the other big deal, right? And this is the example. So that team I just showed you are determining whether or not Kernza sequesters carbon. We already know that it stops the leaching of nitrate nitrogen into groundwater, right? See the bottom line? That's Kernza compared to switchgrass, and the top line, the black line, is corn, treated with 160 pounds. So basically, all of our data suggests that nitrogen does not move through this. It's almost 100% efficient, right? So it gives you that ecosystem services. Now, what if it's also sequesters and maintains carbon in the soil? That's the part that we haven't proven yet, but we're hopeful, right? So the food science group, moving it into the marketplace, wide range of products in the market, right? And the idea is it takes a lot of people to do this work. And I'm going to slip one more slide and tell you just briefly about, that was a perennial example. This is a winter annual example. I'll just use 1 minute. Basically, these are the ones that are being developed to fill the brown in the corn and soybean rotation. This is the idea. Come in the fall, We call this a cover crop with economic value, right? Come in, plant pennycress or camelina in the fall. This is what it looks like in April. Remember what those other slides looked like I showed you from the satellite? That time it was brown. We have this crop growing in the spring. In May, we come in and we plant soybeans into the standing crop. Right, this is what it looks like by May 31st. By June, this is some of our older lines. By June 15th, the pennycress camelina is mature. We come in and harvest it over top of the soybean, and you release the soybean. So you get two crops. You get two crops. The productivity per acre is dramatically higher. You get those ecosystem services, right, through the fact that you're getting two crops off of that landscape. We are now partnering with a wide range of companies to move the oil and protein from these two new crops, camelina and pennycress, into the marketplace. Cargill, PepsiCo, a wide range of companies of that size are now our partners in advancing these two new crops and developing the end uses for these crops. With that, those are the examples, right? The perennials and the winter annuals. We could go into much more greater detail, but I'll stop there and be very happy to entertain questions. And if we don't have enough time to answer all the questions, I'd be happy, as I indicated earlier, to stay online after.
Oh, thank you very much. And this is the part that every teacher loves, which is the questions, eager students wanting to learn. And for those of you that want to ask questions, if you would just go to the raise hand feature down under reactions, which should be at the bottom of your screen, and I will call on you and I will try to do that in order as they come up. And Kathleen has won the competition. She has already asked the first, or is going to ask the first question. So go ahead, Kathleen.
Hi, thanks for the presentation. As I read the fourth National Climate Assessment for the Midwest, it predicts that corn yields are going to go down to 1980s levels. What about these new crops? Can they take increased droughts, increased rainfall, increased temperature that kills off microorganisms? How do they deal with a changing climate?
Well, that's a good question. And you will note in our program, how many crops do we have? 16 or more. I'm not a one crop guy, right? I want to get some diversity out there, and I can go through and describe why do you think we're excited about Kernza? Well, it's a drought tolerant grass, and it does really well in the sand plains of Minnesota. Do you know why? What's the groundwater level in the sand plain? It's about 15 to 20 feet. That damn thing can tap it. Right? It can tap that water. It may be a grass that could grow there without irrigation, right? So those are the things that we're studying. So we're selecting those crops that we think will be able to be positioned and be thought through in the context of climate change. And there's one other one that you might want to review if you go to our website. It's called Silphium Cygrifolium. We are domesticating it. It was, if you go back to the Dust Bowl days and read, you will find that it was one of the native plants that survived really well in the Dust Bowl. It's a cousin of sunflower, but it's perennial. It does really well in droughty soils. In my opinion, it could very well be the next oil and protein crop for the sand plain, rather than us as taxpayers paying for crop failure and soybeans in the sand plain that we all know about, right? And also sequester dam carbon, right? That idea, right? So these are the things that we're thinking about. So that's why it's not just one crop. we're thinking about, we know the climate is changing. And I'll just say one other thing. You know, I told you about my grass seed work. There was indications that over the years that the yields of our cool season grasses were tending down. Right, you know, they are in that eco zone with the lake environment up in that area, right? So I tried to think, well, why in the heck are the yields tending down? That's when I started to look at climate change in northern Minnesota. You know, that's where the 3 ecozones come together. Very potential rapid change. So we looked at in Minoman, Minnesota, and tracked that climate that existed in the 1800s and watched what happened to it over time. During the Dust Bowl, it had migrated way over into Wisconsin. After the Dust Bowl, then it headed back for Fargo. And then over the last 20 years, it is marching north 30 miles a decade, a county, right? So it's moving that fast, right? So we're very much in tune and thinking about that with a series of crops, bringing new crops on board with that in mind. That's a long answer to your question, but yeah, we are very mindful of how these crops could fit into climate change as it happens. And Minnesota is going to be in one of those areas where it's changing fast, right? 30 mile a decade, right?
Thanks.
I think we found a question in the, oops, Greg, go ahead, Greg.
Oh, thanks, Mary, and thank you for this excellent presentation. I have a few questions, but I'll start with one. I appreciate you filling us in about the challenge in funding, especially on these long-term issues you're dealing with here. But interested in your perspective.
And again, it's not just us. I mean, that's why it's difficult to find the data you want around carbon, is because historically that was underfunded, not just for us, but across the board.
Interested in your perspective about the potential for energy crops. And if your research is really focused on that, is it a subset? It seems like most of the examples you were giving was food related, more near term. And there's studies like out of Princeton, if you've seen it, saying the potential for large scale biomass in the Midwest as an energy crop. And just interested, you are very informed, obviously, and is that something which you can foresee in the future?
Well, we're right in the middle of it, right? So this program, you remember the days when biomass, the focus was on biomass for energy, right? And then what happened? What happened? The price of natural gas went to $2. So the cost just didn't make sense, right? So now we're in a new era. And we're talking about electric cars and all of those things in terms of liquid fuels. Within our program, you know, we still have an active program on those perennial grasses for biomass. I think that could happen, right? We're ready, right? If in fact there's a demand for those grasses, that we think we have systems that could fit into that very well. But the new work that we're doing goes back to those oilseed crops, camelina and pennycress, that grow in the corn and soybean rotation that could be pulled out and be put into the marketplace. And just to tell you, we have major programs that are looking at the use of the oil from those two crops for biofuels, jet fuel, diesel. So we are very active right in the middle of that with groups like Cargill, Unilever, plus the food. So we're looking at it as these new oilseed crops for oil. But the other thing that we're finding, you know, remember our work with the food science department. So we're looking at in great detail, not only at the oil, but also at the protein. And all of you online know that you can't just grow an oilseed crop and throw the meal away. There has to be a place for it to go, for the system to be to be viable. So we're looking at the biofuel potential as well as the food potential of those crops. Excuse me. And I just don't know what to say about biomass, right? And Europe has a lot of systems. Germany and France, have a lot of biomass production, and that takes land out of production, right, for food, right? And so I'm very worried about that, right, in terms of taking land out of production. But there's also models and systems being developed where you can take perennial grasses and extract the protein for human consumption. So that is another possibility, right? And then convert the rest, right? So there's a whole series of opportunities, but I'm very concerned about taking land out of production just for energy without a component that could be moved into the food system. Okay.
We have a couple more questions in the queue, but I just want to remind people that this event was scheduled for from 12 to 1, but Dr. Wyse has agreed to take questions beyond 1 o'clock, so feel welcome to stay on. Bonnie, go ahead, you have a question.
I do have a question. As I look out, I've lived in this area in Afton for 22 years and always had our farm fields around us. And over the years, we've noticed that there's been a change in what the farmer next door is doing. He no longer has pigs, he no longer has cattle. It's just the same thing. It's the corn and soybeans. And as I look out on his fields next door, where the soybeans were, I believe, there's no cover crop there. And I don't think that there's a lot of no-till going on. But what does it take for a farmer to actually invest in doing a cover crop, a winter cover crop, that then is folded into his soybean crop, in which he's probably going to plant in spring? Is it a huge cost and time investment to do that?
But it varies, but it's about $60 to $75 to get a cover crop planted and managed. So it's not cheap, right? So you're asking a farmer, and that was the point I was trying to make earlier. That's why we are focused on cover crops that provide economic value to the farmer. I told you that we've been through this damn cycle of those types of cover crops for years and years. It's hard to get them established in Minnesota. And I'm afraid that people are going to get paid for services, carbon sequestration. That isn't going to happen because it's difficult to get those cover crops established from year to year. You may have a good year next year, but it's risk. So that's why I have decided, right or wrong, to look at a new model. That's why we're looking at pennycress and camelina that can go into the system. They thrive in the fall. They grow well into May. You plant soybeans into it, continuous living cover, but the farmer gets a return off of that pennycress and camelina seed, and they also then benefit from the soybeans as they harvest it in the fall. I would argue that the farmer next door to you basically looks at it as a cost that can't be justified in the system. If you talk to him, I would imagine that's what they would say.
So he would have to know that there was a crop he could plant that would have an economic return, and there is a market.
This is just my opinion, right? There's a lot of other opinions. People are still spinning off of the old model of pushing cover crops into the system. I'm not against that, but remember, there's been no investment in the development of cover crops, right? There's no R&D. So the program I'm describing to you is really one of the first times that there isn't a new investment in the development of cover crops that deal with these issues, right? And I would argue that's why the system that I've been involved in my career failed. There was no R&D in developing a new cover crops that could fit into the existing cropping systems of the mid. In
Well,
a way that could be justified to farmers.
Okay, thank you.
We have a question from Don Schuld. Go ahead, Don.
Dr. Wyse, I too want to echo the thanks for a wonderful presentation and great information. I was recently visiting with a regenerative farmer that was entirely into livestock.
Yeah.
Cows, pigs, chickens, turkeys, and sheep.
Yep.
And
remember that picture I showed you in the 40s?
yes.
That would be the system, right?
And his contention is that with regard to us moving more toward a plant-based diet, that is not going to be necessarily as good for the land as his continuously rotating his livestock from pasture to pasture to pasture. And just wondering what your thoughts are on that. I mean, that was good.
Again, going back to the data I showed you, I agree with him. The only systems that have been proven that I'm aware of in the Midwest that actually show carbon sequestration are permanent pastures, where the manure is being replaced in that system. This is, if you look at the long-term data out of Wisconsin, that is the only system that they are willing to say that they have confidence in where carbon is actually being sequestered. Yep.
So I can keep eating meat.
Well, you do whatever you want.
Thank you.
But
I'm reminded.
There's a couple other issues other than carbon sequestration with that thought.
I'm reminded of Dr. Wyse's description. This is a wicked challenge, a grand challenge, and there's a wide open question. So let's keep on with our questions. Camelia, go ahead.
Thank you, Dr. Wyse, for your presentation. It has been an eye-opening for me, especially when you put side by side the brown regions and then the brown regions of Minnesota. Wow, what a difference. And then I'm thinking, I'm an avid sci-fi reader. So of course I read all kinds of books that deal with climate change in a fiction way. But then I wonder a lot. So here you are, a professional with so many years of experience behind you. And I cannot stop thinking that you may have an insight. Is my diet or my daughter's diet is going to change substantially because the climate change? Are our food habits going to change? What's your thinking in this?
Well,
I know we have a beard, but
yeah. I see Dana Jackson is online. Remember, that was a question that she could answer better.
Yes, exactly.
Better
than
I. But I would argue that as the population in the world continues to increase, the current system that we support here in the United States. Remember the Midwest, the grain that's being produced, where does it go? It goes to produce two things, basically, meat and ethanol.
Oh.
Right? Remember, 40% of the corn produced in the state goes to produce ethanol for you all to power your SUVs, right? And then a large portion of the soybean protein goes to China to produce meat products there. The question is, in that system that is highly inefficient, right? when is it going to start to change diet and consumption patterns in the world, right? So I'm part of a group that's called the Protein Highway with the Canadian government, and basically looking at proteins produced in the Midwest for direct human consumption. And they're projecting that the biggest early demand will come from Asian countries, right? But there's also going to be an increased consumption of meat in those areas of the world as well. So here we go. We're all going to be part of that conversation for years to come. But in my team, we are going pushing towards more production of protein for more and oil for more direct consumption.
It was her. It's the.
And actually, I have another question, if I may.
To your home.
If I may. Then you mentioned that farmers do not have any incentive to adopt some of this new agricultural system, and then there is and maybe financial institutions should, push or have a say.
Well, financial institutions could be very supportive. They could help change policy that would support farmers, give them a better safety net. If you look at like Dana Jackson, that's online, and she knows a lot of the organic farmers in the country, and watch the risk that they have taken. But the safety net for them was potentially higher return, because of the value in the marketplace, right? But they all took a risk, and they all had to convince their banker to go with them, right? And some of the folks like Carmen Fernholz, I don't know if any of you know Carmen. Carmen Fernholz is one of the original organic farmers in the state of Minnesota that helped set up the financial safety net and system for marketing organic products out of the Midwest.